Okay, this is for numbers 7 through 11. You had to find the cosine, sine, or secant, or cosecant, or tangent, or cotangent of a given angle here. So the directions told you to use probably reference angles, or in this case, what we used was the unit circle. Now, let's go over some things about our unit circle here. So when I look at a particular ordered pair, if I want to find the cosine at a particular angle here, then the cosine is the x-coordinate, and then the sine is just the y-coordinate. Now, the tangent is the one here that you're going to have to calculate by doing the sine of the angle over the cosine of the angle. So that's how we can get cosine, sine, and tangent. Now, for secant, cosecant, or cotangent here, well, we can do secant by doing the reciprocal of cosine. So if I'm asked for the secant of an angle, what I could do is just figure out what is the cosine, and then just do the reciprocal. So same thing goes for cosecant. If I want to find the cosecant of an angle, I can just do the reciprocal for what I had for the sine of that angle. And I didn't have this one written down. Tangent is sine over cosine. So if we're asked to find cotangent, sine of theta over the sine of theta. Okay, now let's look at those that you had there from 7 through 11. Okay, so number 7 was the sine of 315 degrees. So recall that the sine here is the y-coordinate. So on my unit circle here, I'm going to go to 315 degrees. And so the sine is going to be the y-coordinate. So that was negative square root of 2 over 2. Okay, and number 8, now we're doing the tangent. Okay, so the tangent of 30 degrees is going to be the sine of 30 degrees over the cosine of 30 degrees. Now let's look those values up. Okay, so at 30 degrees, all right, again, we're doing tangent, so it's going to be sine, so it's the 1/2 over the cosine over square root of 3 over 2. So sine of 1/2, or sine of 30 degrees is 1/2, and cosine is square root of 3 over 2. Okay, now we can't leave it like this. This is not a simplified form, so we're going to have to work this out. So remember, this is just division here. This is 1/2 divided by square root of 3 over 2. So we can just write that as multiplication of the reciprocal. So we can say it's 1/2 times the reciprocal of square root of 3 over 2, which would be 2 over square root of 3. Okay, now when we multiply that out, those 2's cancel nicely. Now, that's not leaving me just the square root of 3 here, and I think I got a lot of answers here of square root of 3 that were wrong. But you still have the 1 here, so it's 1 over the square root of 3, which of course needs to be rationalized. So if we rationalize this, this is going to give me square root of 3 over 3. And the next one here was cosine of pi over 6. So this one's in radians. Let's go to the pi over 6 angle, which is basically just 30 degrees. So cosine of pi over 6, the cosine is the x-coordinate. So that's just square root of 3 over. Okay, and now number 10, the sine of 840 degrees. Well, if we look for 840 degrees on the unit circle, we're not going to find that. The unit circle only goes from 0 to 360. So what we're going to have to do there is find a coterminal angle. So I'm going to take 840 and just subtract 360 a few times. And let's see if we can find us a coterminal angle here. So let me punch it in real quick. 840, subtract 360. That's still not in between 0 and 360. So let's subtract 360 again, and I think that's going to be enough here. Yeah, so 120 would fall in between 0 and 360. So this is going to be the same thing as the sine of 120 degrees. Okay, now let's look this up on our unit circle. So at 120 degrees, the sine would be the y-coordinate. So sine here is going to be square root of 3 over 2. Okay, and then number 11, you had to do the cotangent of negative pi over 6. Now, again, this is negative You could find a coterminal angle by adding 2 pi, but this one's really not hard to do with it being negative. I'm just going to leave it negative here and do this. Okay, this is pi over 6. So negative pi over 6 would just go sort of the same angle, but it would go the other direction. And so instead of pi over 6, negative pi over 6 would really be the same thing as 11 pi over 6, because it would just be pi over 6 in this direction here. Okay, and if you added 2 pi to find the coterminal angle, you would get 11 pi over 6. Okay, so now at 11 pi over 6, which is really negative pi over 6, let's find the cotangent here. So recall the cotangent is the cosine divided by the sine. So I'm going to do square root of 3 over 2 divided by negative 1/2. So square root of 3 over 2, that was the cosine, divided by the sine, which was negative 1/2. Okay, so this is real similar to number 8 here. We're going to have to simplify this by multiplying it by the reciprocal here, square root of 3 over 2 times negative 1/2. Oh, I didn't do it by the reciprocal. Times the reciprocal of negative 1/2 would be negative 2 over 1. Right, so these 2's will cancel. And it's just going to leave me with square root of 3 times a negative 1 there. And so that's just negative square root of 3. Okay, there again, let me point out that it's a really good idea to memorize the tangents on your unit circle. Okay, not all of them, but mainly in the first quadrant. Okay, so let me use my other unit circle where I have my tangents written down. So it's really good to memorize here that the tangent at pi over 6 or at 30 degrees is square root of 3 over 3, and at 60 degrees it's square root of 3. Notice here at every midpoint in every quadrant here, you have the same numbers. So the tangent or the cotangent is either going to be 1 or negative 1. Here it would be positive 1 because you're doing a positive over positive. Over here it's going to be negative 1. Down in the third quadrant it's going to be a positive 1 because you're doing a negative divided by negative. And down here is going to be negative 1 because you're doing a negative divided by a positive. Now, so these two numbers, to be my tangents, all I have to do is reflect them around the unit circle. And for my cotangents, all I have to do is the reciprocal of that. So it's very, very handy here. So you don't have to do all this work like this every time to memorize here your tangents. When you have tangent, then you can do the reciprocal.